Hi, this is Jennifer with City Farmhouse Antiques, and I'm here on a Friday, like I always do, for a video. And this week I want to talk to you about hair receivers. It's really something you don't hear about very often anymore, but these are really neat pieces of antiques, especially within the history for every woman to know about. And I've got a set here of a bunch of different varieties. But you'll all notice that they all have a hole in the top. And what the hole was for was to put hair. And so back in the Victorian era, all the way really to the 1950s, you would see women that would brush their hair, and many times because they didn't have a lot of perfume and different things, they put a lot of perfumed oil in their hair because they didn't wash their hair as often as we do now. So they would brush their hair and they would stuff all of their hair down in these holes. And of course the lids come off, and then when they had it filled up or they had what they wanted in there, then they would go ahead and they would sew them into like pin cushions, and the oiled hair would be a nice lubricant for your pins when you put your needles and everything in your pin cushion, so that it would help you, when you're sewing or using your needles. So they'd use them for that, but probably the most intriguing thing that they did was they made what were called rats. It's just like it sounds, a rat. And so they would take the hair out of the jar that they would have, and they would sew it in like a sheer little hairnet and make like a little pillow. And they would use these pillows back in the Victorian era. You didn't want to use a lot of makeup, because if you used a lot of makeup, you were accused of being a painted lady, a so-called painted lady. And so then the hair was that much more important. So they would take these pillows and they would use them to fluff up their hair and have big hair. And so it was a sign of virtue when they would have their hair pulled away from their face, to show that big, broad, wide forehead was a sign of real virtue. So of course it made for a very plain looking woman back then, so the only thing really they could do about it was to poof up their hair. And so it's really a neat piece of history. You don't hear much about hair receivers anymore. They make them out of cut glass and crystal. They made them out of porcelain. There's a lot of them that are hand painted that you can see there, and signed by different makers. This actually looks like RS Prussia, but it's not. It's PK Silesia, which is close. Here you can see a powder jar. Sometimes you'd see them in sets. And there's bigger ones. A lot of them made in Germany, Bavaria, Limoges, Nippon, a lot of just different types of styles. But even though they're out of style, I think they're really neat, especially in the bathroom, on a vanity, as a woman, knowing their history. And I like to take, Q-tips or something cute like that. You can use them to keep Q-tips in on your vanity, instead of a little ugly plastic box like I've got here. Or you can even use them for cotton balls. And you can put your cotton balls, especially if you have a bigger one, you can put your cotton balls in there because the top opens, and store your cotton balls for easy keeping. And it's a pretty way to keep them on the vanity. But probably my favorite use, and what I use them for here at home, especially since they have a lid, is I like to keep my rings in them. I can keep one of these by the kitchen counter, and I can take the lid off, I can put my rings in them, and then they're safe. They're not going to slide out and get into the sink and go down the drain because they've got the lid. And then when I'm ready to leave in the morning or whatever and put my rings back on, or if I go to cook and I want to take my rings off, they're right there by the kitchen sink. I put my rings in and close the top. They can't slide out. Nobody can get to my rings, and they're safe in here because it's got a lid on it. And there's all kinds of different fun styles, different types. Some are footed, like I said, hand painted, footed, made out of crystal, and I think they're a lot of fun, and they're not something you see that often anymore, but I think they're a neat thing to bring back to use, especially as a woman, knowing the history of where they came from and as a woman. So you can check out part of our collection on the website at www.cityfarmhouseantiques, where we have antiques, collectibles, home decor, a bunch of great stuff. So come check us out and like us on Facebook.